Right, hello. Doing a roundup and my choices for the best decks to bring in Store Champs right now, or what I kind of think is the meta that we're seeing right now. And like, I don't know if your Store Champs is very on the meta and if it's very on the top. Like, I think Store Champs is an environment where you can enjoy loads of fun stuff. Like, I've seen Red Amber Racers, I've seen Oswald, I've seen like just Amber Sapphire aggro. I've seen loads of decks do well, and Store Champs is that environment where you can do those things and you can play whatever deck you want. And I'm sure you saw there's still some Sapphire Steel out there that's doing very well. But I think maybe at the top, sort of full on hardcore sweat meta predicting, this is where I'd put the top 5 decks. And yeah, these are the 5 ones I think I want to mention. Everything else, like I say, completely valid. I think RP is still completely valid. Green Steel is completely valid, but we're going to just not talk about them for right now, because if you're a very good player on those decks, why don't watch this video? Just go play those decks. Makes complete sense to me. But for me, yeah, if you're trying to go for the mat, what I would suggest playing, of course, myself personally, I'm still just really rocking Blurple, but I haven't rated Blurple right at the top here because I don't think it's the best choice to bring, but I think it's still a very good choice. But from what I can see and what I can tell, I think Red Blue Shark, I'm going to put Shark, this website doesn't allow me to put Shark underneath Red Blue, is the best deck in the format. And I think people are building it a little bit strangely. In my opinion, I'm not a Red Blue Shark player. I play against it quite a lot because it's so popular and so good. But it's not the deck that I play the most. I think what a lot of people there I've noticed is it used to be this really perfect deck where it was like a 2-liner. It was just a bunch of action, sharks, manas. I understand now we're going into these like techs with Carpetbag because we saw it at Worlds, and Carpetbag is a pretty good card. I think it brings a lot more length to some of your matchups. But I think if you're trying to play a deck like Red Blue Shark, just to start with, I just mocked up going back to the basics, just make it a real 2-liner. Get your Sisus in there because there's a lot of Sisu targets now with Amber Steel aggro and green purple Diablo discard decks. Try cutting the Hades for a little bit. See if you can win the mirrors with the B preps and stuff, because in my belief they used to be winning those mirrors quite well. But maybe play at your locals, maybe start going, hold on, okay, I'm doing all right, but what I'm seeing is I do need to put the Hades in. So then you can start messing around with those Sisu numbers. But I think as well, you don't need to run the carpet bag if you run Hideaway, because then you can just get rid of they're only going to run one carpet bag. And you can get rid of that and say, right, well, we're just playing on the even playing ground again. Neither of us get to use Carpetbag. So yeah, I think it is the best deck in the format. We've seen it over the weekend in PPG. I think it was the event in America where Tyler went very well with it. Definitely look at his list as well. Like I say, I don't play the deck too much, but from my belief, I think you need to go back to the basics with it. It's got things like 1 Hades or 2 Hades and 2 Sisus, and it just feels like you're not really prepared for a matchup. You're just prepared for a wide matchup spread, and you're sort of losing because it's like, oh, if I drew a Sisu there, I'd have been in a really good spot, but I didn't. I drew a Hades. And then if your deck is teched for certain matchups, Amber Steel and Green Purple, which I think are also 2 very powerful decks right now, you won't feel too bad. Of course, if you're just playing Ruby Sapphire Shark Mirrors all day, probably put the Hades in. But in my opinion, I think they just really need to go back to the basics for now and sort of try and understand what I actually need in this list. I think we're seeing a lot of exciting cards like Carpetbag, but I think that was used for a certain thing. I think it was moved for the workshop matchup, just to give some more length in it. And to be honest with you, Carpetbag into Blurple puts a lot more length into that matchup as well, because usually they just resource out. They only rely on the tower for drawing, and if you can just get through that bit, with your finders keepers, your towers, your genies, everything, you should end up drawing more cards than them. But yeah, I think it's the best deck in the format. I think people just need to go back to basics with it and really build up from there again, because we're getting a lot of influence from bigger events and very tech. I mean, the world's techs were just very much for the world's environment. But yeah, I think it's a really powerful deck. But I won't keep going on about it because I'm just going round in circles saying how amazing I think it is, and I don't like that I'm talking about Ruby Sapphire in that way. But the next best one is Amber Steel, and it's aggro again. It's not the wheel version, not the control steel song version. In my opinion, you should play the hybrid one, and I can bring up a list right now to chat about it. I've got a few lists on the screen, and I'm not good at prepping for before video, so I'm gonna have to cycle through them. But yeah, I think this sort of build, we've seen Sky do things like this. Rob got second in PPG, one of the 15k or 10k events, with the list as well. And yeah, I think it's so powerful because you have this default thing of, I'm just going to aggro you. So if you win a die roll, you can go, if I just do Daisy, Piglet, Lady into Piglet or Smee or whatever, I'm probably just going to win that matchup on sheer lore power. If you're on the play, you've still got options to remove things. You know, if you're playing the big song package with Zeus, Strength, Flip the Storm, and you go, right, I'm on the draw here. You know, they get to establish their board first, so I'm going to have to answer some things. I can't just turn everything sideways and win the game with that way. So you can use your Ursula. If not, you can mulligan them away and things like that. You get access to Rhino, again, Lady, really powerful card that I did underrate quite a bit. Dock draw is just insane. If you can just, you know, pair the docks into each other. Rapunzel is amazing. Sven to restand things. I think you could probably drop Sven, but I still like putting him in here. Just amazing, just all around a powerhouse. Just the sheer power of the deck is above a lot of the other decks. But I think if you played against a Ruby Sapphire player who maybe won the die roll, or, you know, maybe is very good at just tempoing you with the brawls into mega ramp into a Sisu B preps, you know, I think they could maybe win as well. I think you still have some fairly rough spots in there, but overall, I think it's just minor losers out to the top spot of the best deck in the format to red blue, because I think it's a bit more aggro mid-rangey, so it doesn't really have any game into later game decks. Like, you know, if the game goes on too long, it can end up just losing I think every turn past turn 4 that you haven't won or got yourself into a winning spot, you're in a roughest, your percentage to win goes down basically. Whereas of course red blue, every turn that goes past that turn, you know, your percentage to win goes up, and games do fairly go on long in Lorcana right now. So yeah, I think it just narrowly misses it, but I think it's a strong spot. And I think I put green blue green purple at the end as well here, but just to mention, I think the two most on paper powerful decks, you know, don't think about techs or like counter decks or anything like that. The two most powerhouse decks in the format have to be red blue and amber steel. Just if you even we can use worlds again as an example, they were the two most banned. I think red blue was the most banned, and then amber steel of course is one of the most banned as well. Just sheer power on paper, how well they perform, they have to take these spots. But if you've been at any store champs over the past weekend, myself included, like green purple discard, it seems very strong. And I got to see a bit of this sort of happening in Italy when I played in Rome. Green purple discard came in because, you know, looking at those two decks, they're two very powerful decks. When they do their thing, it's very hard to beat them. But green purple, you know, you can build it to have a fairly good game into either of them. Red blue doesn't particularly love discard, and I think it takes a very skilled red blue player to understand the discard matchup. So they can take the full discard route, getting rid of early Diablos, you know, if they're not running Brawl, which I've seen a lot of people don't run Brawl, they run like 2 copies or a lower count. Your Diablo can get you such huge card advantage. It doesn't matter when they ramp to the Sisu to answer the board, because you'll be able to slam down 3, 4, you know, whatever, just a ton of stuff on the board the next turn. And maybe they've killed their entire hand, so you can just Bruno and bounce back their Sisu and discard, you know, sudden chill, discard whatever, and just keep going for this really strong route like that into amber steel. You know, you can still play these amazing amounts of 1-drops on the early turns, because you are running these 8 Diablo 1-drops, but they're also, you know, they don't have to be Diablo shifts. They could be things for your crab to buff. And then once your crab is on the board, you know, you can use some more things like that. You can run it into something, buff a Chernobog to a 5 and run it into a Rhino, or you can bounce with a Fox, or you can use Elsa, you can use Cricky. So you have these really good control elements as well with the green purple and the sort of tempoing and using those cards like that. They have access to just so many cards that they can use to really, even if you wanted to, you could go into like Lewis, you know, the 4/3 crocodile was pretty cool. Elsa's pretty powerful at sort of breaking the stalemates. You can bottom deck rhinos. You know, it can still have a fairly good game into that, and overall into everything else like in the meta, discard is always just good, because how do you count on not having cards in hand, or how do you counter someone discarding your cards? Of course, most Amethyst decks are fairly good into discard because they can just refresh their hand and keep drawing cards. But overall, yeah, just having a discard game plan into an open field for quite a few of your early rounds. It's like I said, it's a store champs. A lot of people who don't go to bigger events usually play at them because it's like the only access they have to competitive play, and they just, they want to turn up and play. Then maybe they play their league every week and they play their theme deck or whatever. You can beat all those decks, and then when you get into your top cut or you get into the later rounds where you need to be playing into much more competitive meta decks, you can beat those as well because you'll just have access to aggro, mid-range, and even into the later stages of the game. Bruno's pretty good, Wrong Lever's pretty good. You still can just go wide and aggro them. Genie's an insanely powerful card, and if red-blue is cutting down on Sisus, which I just think is mad, you're only having to play around 2 Sisus that they have to find whilst also getting attacked by discard. So green-purple, yeah, the Diablo build seems very strong. I will mention the tempo one is sort of making its appearance. I think that's not too bad either. You can go for just completely aggro out the the red blue. Merfolk's always a pain for that deck. If you manage to get Merfolk's, Diablos, and just one drops out, that's painful. And into Amber Steel, you can get those one drops out. You play the Ursa on 2, get rid of their song, and then from there you just sort of play the tempo game with foxes and crabs, and you should be able to win the game there. So I'll put on another note that this sort of tempo-y builds are also very good as well. But yeah, I think green-purple sort of comes in and goes, I have a fairly good matchup into eye review. I know you're insanely powerful decks, and when you do your thing, you do your thing well. But I think I can maybe beat that. So yeah, I put that in just on the end of the S tier best deck and format. And I should have put the list that I grabbed up when I was talking about it. But this is the one from over the 10k and the PPG events. I think it's a Jordan. I don't want to say the name wrong, sorry. But it was a really cool guy. He had like a cowboy hat on the entire weekend, and I just every time I got to watch the stream, I just loved watching his games so much. But I think in his tweet he did say he did tweet out his list and said don't use the card They Never Come Back. But the rest of it all seems very, very strong. A bit surprised with only 3 of the green Diablos, but I think the purple one's actually a lot better because they'll probably try and remove it because they fear the shift line, and if they remove it you get 1 card draw. That's pretty good, whereas the 1-2 hand check's not amazing when you're just going to Ursula them anyway. So yeah, but everything is so awesome. There's just so much going on. I'd seen people put in like 1 or 2 hypnotic strength. I don't know. I think it's maybe just more actions for the Diablo discard. But for me personally, I felt like the Argo Wars you can win a bit better, and you run the crabs as well, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, I think this is just a strong list to play at your store champs if you want to play green purple discard, which I think as well it helps that it doesn't have many eyes on it right now, because I've got another list on the choices here that I think kind of can beat green purple discard, but it's the last one. It's purple steel. I'm not going to put you on edge with that one. But yeah, it just seems to be so powerful right now. But before I keep blabbering on about that list, we'll go to the next one, which is Blurple. Of course, it's a deck that I've sort of found my home in after just not getting the results I wanted with Amber Steel Aggro. Again, Amber Steel Aggro is amazing. I just didn't like... I've never been a player who likes bringing a list that's, so up in the meta and it's so high up there that other opponents are teching for it and are building for it. So I found my home in Blurple. I think Blurple is also another deck that people are thinking about and going, how do I beat the Blurple matchup? But, I don't... It's not too powerful of a deck that has anything that's in its busted. The most I've seen is people put like World's Greatest Criminal Mind in for Monstro and things like that. But overall, Blurple either does its thing or it doesn't do it. And that's why I've kind of really liked it. We played at Store Champs this weekend and we got top 4 with it. We lost to a green purple discard that just opened really well. Diablo into Singing Friends, and that's the high roll that you get with that deck. And you kind of just hope they don't do it. But of course, all that Blurple is really aiming to do is play this kind of really strong, consistent game. And every game, that was the only round we lost in top 4. And every game, it's just ramp on 2, Genie or Yargo, no matter what you want. Whichever one you want. If you need to be on the sort of taking back the board control, You can play the Argos down. Otherwise, you can play the Genie. You can, Elsa Exert and do everything. Into Amber Still aggro, I feel absolutely fine. They can still win the game, though, if they're on the play and they just rush out characters. Ruby Sapphire Shark, I feel fairly good into that matchup. But, with the introduction of Carper Bags, made me have to react and put Cusco in because I'm like, well, I find that matchup very good because you just resource drain them. But if they're going to use Carper Bag and gain an extra card every turn, that could be a bit of a game changer. So I put the Cuscos back in. And then, yeah, even to green purple discard, I feel like if you could ramp a Genie down, their Diablo's kind of a bit offline, and then whenever they try and like do some discarding, that's fine with you because you're able to just draw a bunch of cards back with Finders Keepers, Kamatoa, Singing Friends if you draw friends as well. So overall, yeah, I found Blurple to be the absolute all-rounder of this set. Every matchup feels winnable. Of course, it doesn't do anything amazingly. Even when you pop Bell turn 1 and Sing Friends, it feels like an amazing play, but it's not the same as Diablo Shift Sing Friends, in my opinion. It's not even close to the power level of that. It's just sort of a helping hand. So yeah, the mulligan's so simple as well. Like, it doesn't matter if you're playing into the blind or into a knowing matchup. It's fairly simple what you want to do. You want to ramp on 2, you want to look for Bell, and you want to look for a Genie or an Iago. So yeah, I think as the all-rounder deck that probably doesn't have any bad matchups and also is not looked at as a I need to tech for this and I need to beat this sort of deck, Blurple is your gal for that one. The same way that sort of I guess RP was in set 3, where it just felt like that all-rounder deck. Of course, that was teched at and thought about quite a lot, but with Blurple, it's not really in that same category, I think. I don't know. If people are teching for Blurple, that's mad, in my opinion, but yeah, it just felt so strong. It felt like you can get some real skill difference with it as well. Like, if you value yourself as a very good Lorcana player and you know the game quite well, you can usually win matchups that you thought you probably couldn't win before because you have all the options there. Learning about tempo and trading. I think both Blurple and Purple still teach you a lot about Lorcana as well. So yeah, my money is just on I'm going to play Blurple out for the rest of the season. Every time we've played it, we've got 22, we came 22nd or something like that on Axiom the first time we ever played it. Then we came 3rd, then we came 4th overall to win some prizing. Then we played in Italy and we got 22nd out of like 300 players, and we only missed out on breakers. And then this weekend we got top 4 of it. Every time I played it, it's just been absolutely consistent, and it just does what it wants to do. And on the day, you might get high rolled by someone, but that's all you can really accept on that. You have to just kind of accept and move on that you're playing a fairly fair deck. So yeah, I'm still going to say Blurple is my choice, but if you want to play the best deck in the format, Ruby Sapphire is up there as well. And Amber Steel aggro, just both those 2 decks on if you read what the cards do, basically on paper, Amber Steel aggro and Ruby Sapphire just do way more powerful things than Blurple do, but Blurple does everything it does way more consistently. I'm hoping what I'm trying to say here making sense. You can go for sheer power or you can go for consistency. There's loads of different ways you can play card games, and that's what we love about them. But the final one to mention is Purple Steel. I saw it win a bit over the weekend, and I don't know if people had the sort of notion to try and tech for green purple, because basically Purple Steel can have a very good game into Purple Steel. Purple Steel can have a very good game into green purple discard. If we look at a list like this, I've just grabbed JDR's bunny list, but he has a few others on there. He's got the dump truck list as well, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it's the same thing if you're just playing very strong steel removal. On top of that, every card mostly says draw a card, and then you've got goats in there. So if they ever put you into top deck mode, most of your top decks are going to be fairly useful. And if not, most of your cards are going to say draw a card, or they're going to be removal cards. I think as well, I hope JDR doesn't watch this because I think he doesn't rate the card very well, but you could easily, because it's such a toolbox of a deck, Purple Steel, you could easily put Fire the Cannons in there. You could put some more steel removal in there. That's why they're running cards like Dump Truck, because you can play it, bounce it, play it, and do 2 damage, and you've established a Dump Truck and a Snake on the board that just quests, and you can always bounce it as well. And it's just an awkward another 0/1 body on the board that's going to be questing out, or it's already done something on play as well. It's pretty good for getting rid of like the purple Diablos. As I said, people are more likely going to be playing them over the green ones. So yeah, I think Purple Steel sort of swoops in and has a fairly good matchup into the green purple deck. And on top of that, you can still do the same thing of I'm going to Pete Lock and Elsa and Zeus, because you've got Zeus in this, into the Amber Steel aggro. Calhoun on 2 is always going to be a bit weary for an Amber Steel aggro if they've gone Daisy into Piglet or something, or Daisy into Smee. And then as well, it's game into Ruby Sapphire. We've seen loads of different builds where they use the Yentsids and stuff like that. I think from what I've been told, Purple Steel's wins on the play versus Ruby Sapphire and loses on the draw. But, the Yentsid builds and maybe putting Cobras into your list. So this could be a good starting point, but then you could build it for, right, I really want cards that sort of help spread over these matchups. And that's fairly hard to do if you're going to try to do 3 matchups, so maybe pick 2 of them and try and counter them very hard. I've seen a lot of people, cut down on the Elsas, and they're like, well, I lose the Amber Steel matchup because Elsa's quite impactful in that matchup. But, I'm going to beat the Green Purples and I'm going to beat the Ruby Sapphires in the room. And they introduce more cards to do that, fire the cannons for the Green Purple, and then Cobras and stuff like that for the Ruby Sapphire. So, or you could just use dock decks as well. I've always loved a dock deck. So yeah, in my opinion right now, if you really want to try and go for that store champ, you want to go for that win. I think if you fancy yourself as a good Ruby Sapphire player, it's clearly the best deck on paper, just outperforming everyone, just power level. Amber Steel aggro, again, it's not shy of being in that spot as well. It's on power very good. It would just struggle if you go very late into the game. And also these 2 decks have very big targets on their back. Everyone's thinking about them. Everyone's thinking about ways to beat them. Green Purple discard is a way to think about beating them, in my opinion. It has a fairly good game into both of them. And then you've got Blurple as well, that's just a consistent powerhouse, and Purple Steel, who can sort of be a tech to answer this predicted meta, because you might bring the Purple Steel that's meant to beat the Green Purple stuff and have a good game to Ruby Sapphire or Amber Steel, and you go, and on the day everyone's on like Ruby Amethyst and they're on like Oswald decks or whatever, so it could end up being complete fluke. Because I remember in Italy I played about 3 Purple Steels, and they were like, oh yeah, I have got Magic Broom in my deck, I've got just tons of fire the count, I've got tons of answers for Green Purple discard, I'm just not playing into it. So that can always be the rough thing when you try and meta predict, and that's why sometimes people just go for the powerhouse decks, because they're like, well, I'll just see what I play into on the day. But for me personally, Green Purple discard just seems to be performing the best. At least this weekend it won very heavily. I'd go for that. Or, if not, go for an all-rounder like JDR type build, and maybe, just throw some fire the cannons in there or something if you wanted to, and just don't tweet him and tell him I said that. Just to put some more answers in there. And then, yeah, if you're just like me and you just want to play consistent and you don't want to think about matchup spreads and stuff, and, teching and countering, a Blurple build is absolutely fine and a strong choice as well. Of course, my Blurple build right now, it has 2 techs for Carpet Pack, but that's about it. And to be fair, those Cuscos are quite helpful into anything, into Workshop. To be fair, this is probably the list I continue running, and just don't run the Annas anymore, because I've not found the Annas that helpful. But yeah, right now, top choices, if you really want to do well, I think is Green Purple discards. Start with that. Purple Steel, try build a bit of a toolbox answer to the meta that maybe you're seeing evolve as well. And that's a good thing. You can take Purple Steel and sort of, if you know the store that you're going to, you can build it to beat that sort of store. It has all the answers in there if you need them, and it's a consistent deck. If you just don't want to care about matchup spreads, Purple Blurple is just there for you. It's just it just does that thing it wants to do. And then on paper, if you just are like meta follower, you just want to absolutely grind it, Ruby Sapphire Amber Steel is up there for you, and everything else is all preference play, in my opinion. So that might be a bit harsh to Ruby Amethyst and like Green Yellow Under the Sea or something, but in my opinion, yeah, all these decks are playing their own game right now, and everything else just feels very like I played this deck because I like it, sort of preference stuff. But yeah, I'm going to end it there, because otherwise I'm going to keep blabbering on and it's not going to make much sense.